Great.
Yes, we have to
got it.
agree.
Okay. Streaming live on YouTube. Amazing.
Okay, here we are.
All right.
Welcome to the Red Room, and welcome Josh Peters, who is our guest today.
Hello, Josh.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, and thank you for coming.
My
So
pleasure.
we were talking before we started this. We were talking about what happened last night, the email you got, and I also got the same email from Stella Gamma.
You know, it's just sort of a funny thing when you help write a book and you get the email saying it's come out, and then you've got the it's like, oh, okay. So yeah, Cepheus Deluxe Enhanced Edition. We did well, I'm with Stella Gamma Publishing, and we put out Cepheus Deluxe. Was it earlier this year? No, we put it out last year, and then we kickstarted a enhanced edition, and that's that was this year, and it's come out. The PDF came out last night. Surprise. So yeah, that's up on Drive-Thru, and then later this month, I believe we'll get the print on demand available as well. Yeah,
was there a Kickstarter for the first one, or just for the second one?
No, that was Cepheus Deluxe sort of happened because we did, Cepheus Engine came out a while back, and it's a great toolkit. And then Omer myself did Cepheus Lite, which is a very well. It has certain design choices that we went with right away, and then people really liked it, but they wanted, they wanted certain things to happen in Cepheus Lite. Like I think one of the big choices we did was there were no attribute bonuses for the 2d6 roll. It was just skills, skill bonuses, right? If you understand it's 2d6 just plus your skill. I'm a math nerd, so this comes like the mechanics nerd, so this happens immediately with me. And people, I was like, well, that's great, right? That's what we want to model, this sort of, anyone can do anything, because if you just have the skill, it doesn't matter how you get the skill, your attribute doesn't matter. Well, that was a great idea in theory, but everyone's like, no, add the attribute bonus, because that's how it goes. You add the attribute and the skill, like, everyone's been doing for 30 years. Okay. So yeah, so that was one of the things, for example, in Cepheus Deluxe that we changed. And so we started, we took the feedback from Cepheus Lite. It was well received, and we changed things up, and we built up Cepheus Deluxe, added more rules for ship combat. I'm trying to remember, it was a while ago, and we put out Cepheus Deluxe in 2021. It was a success, and so then we wanted to clean it up, take the errata, make it not just print on demand, but make it a really nice book, and add things like deck plans and more adventures and things like that, more adventure seeds and things like that. So yeah, that just came out last night, and so we'll hopefully see the print on demand in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
So this being a game that has no setting, just rules, how did you divide the stuff between you guys? So you are 3 or 4 people?
For Cepheus Deluxe, we were 4. Let me think. So I'll answer the question. So Cepheus Deluxe is sort of the 2d6 sci-fi traveler thing, right? There's a bit of an assumed setting in certain things of how technology works, mainly how space travel works, and there's no faster than light communications. But basically after that, you can do what you want. We have our own setting that we've developed called Terra Arisen, that we put out, was it this year? Yeah, we put it out this year as well in PDF and print on demand. But that's our own setting that we decided to make. But Cepheus Deluxe, you can do whatever you want with it. You can play pretty much any kind of, it doesn't even have to be science fiction, right? You can use it for pretty much anything. In fact, we adapted Cepheus Light into something called Sword of Cepheus, which is a Conan the Barbarian swords and sorcery style game, and so that's also available. You can do a lot with the 2d6 engine. So that was, yeah. So there's no system per se, no setting per se, but there's a couple of basic ideas and that come out of just the way the game is set up. Then, yeah, the other thing was you asked about
Yeah, how did you divide the work?
how do we divide it up? So let me remind myself. So okay, so basically there's the four of us. I remember, let me think. Bob did a section on campaigning and some GM advice. He also did the index. He does the indexing for all our work. He's a librarian, so that's like, I have no idea how that works, but he does it and it's great. Richard does a lot of the shipbuilding. He used to be in the Navy and on submarines, so there's a lot of crossover between
Makes sense.
living in a nuclear powered ship and living in a nuclear powered spaceship. So yeah, he does a lot of that stuff. And Omer, I'm trying to remember what it was all sort of vague, and we all sort of, you know, jumble around and do different things and help each other out. But I did a lot of the adventure seeds, the encounter rules for ships, and yeah, and Omer did a lot of the mainly the character generation and a lot of the skills. And then the reason it's getting hazy because I do a big editing pass, so I go through the whole thing, and I don't do a lot of proofreading, or I should say I don't do proofreading very well, but I do a lot of the organizing and making sure everything sort of fits in the right place. And I give people a lot of grief over things, and then we put it all together. So it's hard for me to sort of separate out where everything is. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Omer usually comes with like I have a project, I want to do this thing, let's go, and then we all glom onto it.
So I guess
we are going over it. Sorry, Miguel. Now with the game we are doing, because it's really three of us doing it, and yeah, it's like I'm doing this bit. I'm doing. Did you wrote this already? It can become a bit confusing.
And you,
yeah,
I think we need someone like you now.
Yeah,
we don't have one Josh Peters here, but you need it.
Yeah, the editing, it's funny because I don't actually do editing professionally. Like I teach, and I suppose there's, I teach history sometimes, so I do a lot of editing when people come to me with their papers and their projects. But yeah, it's just, I've done a lot of writing, and I've had a lot of my writing edited, and so I'm sort of the way I put it to them is like, words are not your children. You can murder them all you want, and you can always make more, right? And it's okay if I hack off a paragraph and it's like, no, this doesn't fit here, or no, this doesn't belong, and the passive voice is something up with which we will not put, the usual sort of nonsense of that. There's certain things you just don't want to write a certain way, and you got to make it very clear. And yeah, I do a lot of the campaign, like the little adventure seeds, the campaign seeds in Cepheus Deluxe. Those I did a lot of the work on that, because that was for me. I run a game every week, so 2 different campaigns alternating every week. So I'm constantly adventure building, and it's that's why that's it. Yeah.
So your background is in history?
My background's actually math and history, and yeah, that's sort of, I just those are the two things I enjoyed in university and kept going with history, and then eventually became a teacher. And
when we first
so
talked about Wretched Epoch, you mentioned that I should have talked a little bit more about the Dreyfus affair, and I thought,
oh, the Dreyfus, yeah,
that's kind of
Yeah,
strange.
I,
I wasn't expecting someone to say that I should have put more of their time, because I thought,
it's
hey, I think
I-
I'm repeating Dreyfus's name too much.
yeah, so that's part of what I studied tangentially. It's related to it, and basically, I'm a huge history nerd, and that's what like totally turned me on to the Red Room. I was like, oh my god, someone's writing about the Belle Epoque. This is amazing. Like, you guys, like, everyone's done, spaceships, and everyone's done westerns and fantasy, but like the Belle Epoque, there's like, I mean, I could think of a Wretched Epoch and maybe Space 1889, the 4 different versions of that, and then it kind of gets a little hazy. And Space 1889 is very, steampunk. It's very British, right? And you
Yeah,
guys really
I think
focus on
I think there's either a French there's a French game in the Belle Epoque, but it's written in French. I don't think it was ever translated, so it's
Yeah, most games on that, or most settings on that, they just go to England, and it's very Victorian.
which makes sense, of course. It's more
Yes, but there are
yeah.
a lot of interesting things happening in France at that time.
Oh, amazing things, right? And you guys really capture that. And so I think I was probably being just a little exuberant about like, oh yeah, we need to hear more about the Dreyfus affair. Probably thinking in terms of, there's so much.
There was much more to say about it, but I just okay. I'm going to stop here. No more about the Dreyfus affair. I'm just going to write about other stuff. But in fact, I was when I was researching it, it kept coming, more things and more things.
It was, I think, for France in that late 1800s, early 1900s. I think it was the cultural moment, right? I think a lot of France turned on the Dreyfus affair in some way or another, and it's really it's a fascinating and in some ways really horrible moment. That's what it was, So yeah, no, I've been I've been following you guys. Like, I have to say, like, we're putting out maybe 2 books tops a year, right? Like, as a whole collective. We've got a few things coming soon, I think. But how do you're doing like something like almost every week?
But you're doing
now I'm gonna say
you're doing like solid, serious books.
Yeah, ours aren't serious.
I'm glad I can look down my nose at the Red Room. No, I don't think that's it. I mean, Wretched Space is like 300 plus pages.
A lot of it is rules, right?
What's that?
A lot of the Wretched Space book is rules, so it's we just repeated the rules. So there's always some pages that okay. I'm working full time, so and on weekends as well, full time.
So, okay. So this is full time.
Yeah, it's a full time job.
So
all right, it's a full. And that it has been since the beginning. So 7 months ago. So it started as a.
Okay.
Of course,
I think it's easier to explain that. Yeah, you're not doing. I have a full time job, so I write less. But yeah, it's doing it.
Well, you are definitely an inspiration to us all, because it's like, if this is what you can do with a full time job, game writing, you should all do this, right? But
I think you have to move to a third world country. It's probably easier to do that way. I don't think in Canada you can. Maybe you can. I'm not sure. I don't know how Stella Game is doing.
Well, it's been a good year, but yeah, it's not something that I'm definitely not giving up my my public system job, my public school job to write full time. Although that is the dream, right? That is in a way the dream. It's like just.
Well, there's some people that live from this, but I think usually it's I don't know. Well, usually I'm not sure about the usually, but in independent role-playing games, I know about what the RPG Pundit. He lives in Uruguay.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
there's
the thing with it's been a big change, right? Like, it's conceivable to do it, I think, because back in the 80s and 90s, you had to actually have access to publishers and distributors, and there was a whole you had to be hooked into the publishing network and the distribution network and the retail network to do this, right? And like I had my Dragon magazine subscription, and it was all that sort of thing. But now, I mean, you can put out a book and you never have to talk to a distributor. You just upload it onto Drive-Thru or onto Lulu, and then it's printed off if you want or not. And there's no warehousing. There's nothing, right? So there's really, I think, now the roadblock for doing this full time is aside from risk, is just whether or not you can find people to buy your games and have a fan base and have good games that come out, and make sure the hobby is still being played, right? Make sure that the games are being played, and that's
except for that, it's just if you can do a layout and write something,
right?
And doing a layout is not difficult. I learned it in a couple of months, so it's just
I will take your word for it, because
it's kind of easy. Probably I'm not sure how easy it is to do it with the usual software that most people use, which is what's it called?
Insight?
No, I was thinking about the Adobe program, which is
I don't know what is the name.
I can't remember the name of it.
Okay.
No. Well, anyway, the one I use is very easy. It's Affinity software, and it's very easy. I think it's it's professional, but kind of done for people who aren't professionals. So it's easier than the really professional stuff. There's always lots of options, and then you don't really need to do this kind of work, right? This is
that's good to know. I know I don't do any of the layout. Like me and art.
That's Omer's job, right?
That's Omer. I can nitpick it. I'm like, the table isn't, the text isn't centered right in the table, right? But I'm that guy, but I can't actually do the layout. No. That would be bad.
So you are a gaming group? The authors of
sorry?
The four authors, do you game together, or just you're just joined for work?
Well, it's actually I'll tell you the how I joined Celligama, because it's actually kind of funny. But no, I run two games live, like in person. Although because of COVID, we had gone on to Roll20 for about 2 years, but now we're back in person. But what happened was that I was let me think. Right, so I was running games, and I had to take a break. Well, right, because we moved from Montreal to Ottawa so I could do my Bachelor of Education for a year. It was just a year-long sojourn, and we had a newborn, and my wife was on mat leave, so it all lined up. I went and did the degree, and we moved back. And during that time, and a little before, and during that time, I was writing a setting. I was just writing an RPG setting for using Stars Without Number and game design, like setting design tools like that. And I was going to run games when I came back to Montreal. And my wife looked at the stuff I was doing, and we're talking about, like, I think it started around 75 pages, and now it's closer to 150 of just setting material. And she's like, "You need to get this published." I'm like, "I don't need to get this published. No one's gonna buy setting material, especially like science fiction. No one's going to do that. So, you know, she's like, well, didn't you get into contact with that guy Omer and Richard that put out Outer Veil? This is back when there was Mongoose had an open license for first edition Mongoose Traveler. A lot of people wrote a bunch of really cool rules and settings for that rule set. And I had contacted Omer and Richard about I had a whole bunch of questions about their setting. It's a cool little setting, Outer Veil. And we started chatting, but it was no big deal. And then, you know, my wife said, yeah, send them the material, send them the 80-page manuscript. Unsolicited, you know, just send it to them, you know. So I said, I sent them the manuscript and said, would you guys mind publishing this? Can I publish through you? And they replied with, actually, we'd like to bring you on to Stella Gamma. I was like, oh, that was unexpected, and a major boost to my ego. So that was great. And so we put that out. That's the Lurien Trailing Cluster in 3 parts. It's cool. I've been running games in that and in a bigger setting for like 4 or 5 years now, and that's been fun. And then I started editing their material, and they started editing my material, and I started working with them on things like Cepheus Light and things like that. So no, we actually never met in person. I've met Richard because Richard's in the States, and his job took him up to Montreal one time. Omer and I have only talked once on Zoom. We chat all the time on Messenger, and Bob was in. I ran a one-off Twilight 2000 game using the Modern War rules by Zoser Games. That's the 2d6 Modern War rules.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how, you know. And so he was in that game. But yeah, I mean, eventually I think I'll travel to Israel and meet up with Omer. It's been I've been to Israel a couple times, but you know, it's just a coincidence that he happens to be there, and one of these days will be fun.
So you start Stella Gamma is not around for a long time, so it's about 2 years.
If we count that Omer and Richard worked on Outer Veil together, they've been collaborating for like 10 years or so.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think
it's been longer than I thought.
But Stella Gamma, I think you're right, is
oh yeah, the company itself, right? With that name.
Yeah, 5 years. I'd have to check, but yeah, it's not that. It's not a decade, that's for sure. I don't think.
Yeah. So that's they started with Cepheus, right?
Well, yeah, it was we started with things like we did. I know Richard did some supplemental material for Stars Without Number, and so did I. And we were at some point when it was announced that Mongoose wasn't going to renew the open license for Traveler for the 2nd edition. I'm looking at my shelf, and I'm trying to remember who put out Cepheus, the company that put out Cepheus Engine. I really want to plug them because they did such a good job.
Oh yeah, I didn't remember that the Cepheus was someone else, right?
Right. So yeah, the Cepheus Engine, they put it out.
Moontoad.
It's gonna bug me. It's
Moontoad
Jason
Publishing.
Kemp. Jason Kemp,
Oh.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Moontoad,
Yeah.
Moontoad Publishing, and Jason Kemp, he put it out, and he did a great job. And yeah, it's a toolkit. So what are you gonna do with the toolkit? You're gonna customize it. So once we took a look at Cepheus Engine, it became a question of what are we gonna do with this, and basically basically, yeah, Cepheus Lite and then Cepheus Deluxe is a bunch of design choices that we made on the Cepheus engine platform to just make it work a certain way and do things a certain way. We reduced the number of skills. There's no cascade skills. We made ship combat much more abstract. Careers are a little more like the Mongoose first edition. There's event tables, so you can have specific things happen to your character and turn it into a narrative. It's not just if you fail the survival roll, you die, which you can still do, but although we've made that optional. And then in Cepheus Deluxe, we the big thing that we did is we made not point by, but like basically non-random character generation the norm, which is not what you're supposed to do in Traveller, right? So Traveller, it's all random generation, and you're supposed to build the character out of the rolls you get, which is really cool. But we're finding that more and more people, especially the less grognard, less experienced, the younger set, younger than me, right? They like being able to have full control over their characters in character generation. I see you're nodding a little. It's like, yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, I like rolling the characters, but normally what I do is I prefer, if I have this idea for the character already, I prefer to just, okay, these stats go to, and not do it the other way around. Well, it depends.
I also prefer to have a concept that I can do the randomness after that, but I like the concept.
It depends. If you're just playing one shot, then I'm okay with being absolutely random.
Yeah,
but if I'm going to be to play a campaign, I like to have like a concept.
No, that's exactly it, and I think that's the norm, and that's it, right? And if you look, out of the box with Cepheus Engine, that's not what's supposed to happen, right? You're supposed to roll up your character and you get what you get, and if the character dies, then you roll up again, right? So with non-random, it's really great for doing exactly that. You can build the concept you want. It also can help with things like making sure there's a pilot and a mechanic and a gunner and a face and things like that. That's helpful. But we reintroduced random character generation as an option, and it's a little thing you can download for free on drive-through, because, well, there's a demand for it, and also it's really fun to have a whole bunch of players around a table, and you go term by term. You do every 4 years, right? You roll, you do the next term together. And I've seen players, like, they're not too sure, they're hemming and hawing, and then all of a sudden, the one that stuck out in my mind recently, I ran this sort of as a one-off just to make characters for fun. One of the players, his character got sent to prison. He was like, he got sent to prison, got all his teeth kicked in a prison fight, and all of a sudden the players were like, oh my god, this is the coolest character ever, right? Just because, like, that thing happened at random, and we would have never, like, built that into the story, right? And so to do that,
we had an experience when it was with Traveller. Do you remember that one of the players really wanted to be oh damn it, I don't remember what's the name of the class. Scout, yeah. He really wanted to be a scout, so he was rolling and rolling and rolling, and in the end he gave up, and he ended up with a character that it was really bad. He spent a lot of time in prison, but it was the funniest character. It was a total failure.
That's it, right? You get these characters that might be really more interesting to play, but it's hard to do that, and often you're just like, no, can I just play the scout already? Can we just do this? This is who I want to be, right? And a lot of the times that's really just what has to happen. So yeah, I mean, it's good to have both options, I think. And I was really, really pleased to help out with that. And it was a lot of fun to do because yeah, for exactly that, right? I've run one-offs where I'm like, okay, here's the number of skill levels you get, go. And then I have another time where it's like, let's actually build the characters and have some fun. And yeah, you really get to see a different dynamic develop at the table with the players. But yeah. Okay, yeah. What else?
Other changes that you introduced in this version?
So in this latest version, there's a lot of errata. I know we did. There's a lot of errata got fixed. I hope all the errata got fixed. I imagine there's probably something still there lurking. One thing I on my end, I know that I wanted to, so the campaign and adventure seeds in Cepheus Deluxe were great. I came up with another, I think 8 and 4, 8 and 6 and 2. I don't remember. It was basically another bunch of adventure, new adventure and campaign seeds. Just because why repeat yourself when it's more fun to just come up with more adventures. We deck plans, I think 13 designs, more art. A lot of it, a lot of commissioned art from some of the artists we know. I'm trying to think of again, like, my end of it was a lot of the, just making sure the mechanics right. We made sure that we cleaned up a lot of the mechanics. One thing that we did was make sure that all the traits worked properly. So, and got rid of a couple, added a couple of other ones. So these are another innovation that we came up with, was traits or based, special abilities your character can do. And this is where we very, very clearly define, for example, roll 3d6 and keep the best 2, right, for specific examples. And that was something I was very, for me, it was very important. One of the things that you have to be careful with the 2d6 system is if you change things, it's like, because every if you change things a little, especially adding like 3d6 keep the best 2, if you do that for something like, because everything's skill based, if you do that for something like one skill and you say, oh, whenever you roll your skill X, you get 3d6 keep 2, that's super, super, super powerful. And especially for things like, whenever you roll your small arm skill or your melee combat skill, your melee combat skill, then you're going to crush everyone before you, and that's it. It becomes, you basically break the combat system out of the box, and we didn't want to do that. So very, very careful about where certain bonuses go and things like that. We just made sure we're working properly, and I hope we caught them all, because otherwise it's it's my fault. No. Yeah, so and again, right, like there's, I'm sure I'm missing stuff. I know that there's definitely art, and the deck plans, the background, the layout's better. Yeah, it was just, it was a big success, and we wanted to make sure that that everything worked, that everything was solid on it, and then this way we can, I don't want to say put it to bed, but at least it's a milestone. Yeah. What else? I had questions for you, but I can't remember what they are right now.
I was not trying to check how much the other game at the Cepheus Deluxe, or the original, was selling on drive-thru. It was what, a best whatever seller.
It was a Mithril. It was a Mithril, which was our milestone. Was that it was like, whoa, we have a couple of platinums, but that was yeah. Once we found out, once we saw Cepheus Deluxe go Mithril, which wow, we're
Mithril is
really
what?
nerdy
How,
here.
how many
I
copies?
It's either 1,500 or 2,500
Mhm.
or something like that.
Mm.
It's
Yeah, it's a lot.
it's a lot. It's a lot, you know. And like that's the thing, right? Like that's the you know the that's where the feasibility of being able to do this
Mhm.
more seriously, like you know, like you,
Yeah.
Miguel, like full time. It's like because you know it's doable because you do all
Yeah.
the same things that you'd normally do to build up your client base and your audience, but now you have now you don't have to worry about warehousing, and you don't have to worry about a whole bunch of things that you had to with the old model, right? And I mean, I
Mhm.
think of all those amazing game companies that got us to where we are today that aren't around, especially Game Designers Workshop, the guys that made Traveler, right?
Mhm.
ESR, right? And like Game Designers Workshop, those guys were amazing. They put out like so many cool games, and you know they forget Twilight 2000, like just stuff like Traveler, forget Traveler, and 2300 AD. They're the ones who came up with Space 1889, right?
Mhm.
In 1989, they almost single-handedly invented steampunk. Not exactly,
Mhm.
but in terms of RPGs, they gave us steampunk, and like that's they're gone, right? And could you imagine the sorts of things that if that was around now, if they were around now, the sorts of games they'd be able to produce with the kind of the electronic distribution that we have. It'd be amazing, right? But
Yeah, there was a moment there that lots of companies disappeared.
yeah,
In the 90s, somewhere in the 90s.
yeah. Well, a lot of it had to do with collectible card games.
Yeah, Magic. I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
That I was never into card games, so just and but there was I noticed that there was a I don't think if it's something, well, in Portugal there is no industry, but even here you could notice it, because even the gaming stores, they
Yeah.
vanished, and they
Well,
were
now
replaced.
the ones that exist, they were converted into game board stores.
They started selling other stuff,
Yeah.
and for a while it even here you notice the results of that.
Yeah, I mean, Canada's a big place, so I can talk about where I was in the 90s, which was on the West Coast in Victoria, in British Columbia. Yeah, there were a few gaming stores that suddenly, they didn't disappear, but they had to pivot very hard and became much more about collectible card games than about role-playing games, board games, or miniatures games and comic books. And here in Montreal, it's a little different. There's a big like fantasy gaming scene here, and and urban fantasy too. And I'm not really connected to it all that much, mainly because it's all in French, and while my French is passable, it's not game level game. It's not worthy for certainly not for running games. And a lot of the games here, a lot of the gamers here, they're bilingual, and the games they have to come out in French as well as English, but everyone buys the English versions because the French versions are more expensive, right?
Yeah, normal.
Yeah, makes
And
sense.
right, you have to translate it, and it's just more expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the language laws here because that's a whole different thing. But basically, yeah, there are a lot of gaming shops, but it's very different than it was when I was a kid. And like I remember distinctly, the ones when I was a kid were like, they were huge, and I remember there was one Capitaine Quebec, right? That it was a comic book and gaming shop, and it used to have an entire huge wall with just BattleTech.
There was
right?
a lot of books for that.
There was a lot of BattleTech back in the late 80s, right? It was like a huge amount of it. And now, I mean, the store moved, but now it's all like collectible card games and you know, nerd and geek paraphernalia stuff and more collectible cards and board games.
Mhm.
And they might have like a rack of D&D books, D&D 5e books, and that's it.
I
Here,
think here we even see it on the comic stores. I think
Yeah.
a lot of the comic stores there, I think they also sell collectible toys.
Right.
It's probably even more than comic books.
Oh yeah, it, you know, it's a real well, we've seen the you know, there's been a big explosion of geekdom, right? I mean, when, you know, my mother-in-law
also a very
don't you,
strange thing.
it is an extremely strange thing.
Yeah.
And oh, that's right, we were going to talk about something like, but when my mother-in-law starts asking me about like the Big Bang Theory, and I'm like, look, I don't really watch that, not, you know, because I don't really need to. That was actually my life in university, and we made all those jokes, and you know, that's what we did. Like, you know,
I
so
also didn't watch it.
Yeah, me neither.
I
Well,
heard people talking about it,
I
but
watched
yeah,
bits and I hated it.
it's well, look, I mean, in a way, it's really cool to, you know, to see young people who are not, you know, nerds like me talking about Marvel movies and comic books and you know, Dungeons and Dragons and other RPGs, mainly Dungeons and Dragons, but at least
yeah.
like they're talking about RPGs, and you know, it's like a semi-normal thing. You're like, this is whatever bizarro world I you know, wherever the portal was that I stepped through in my sleep. I don't know what's going on, but here I am in this world, right? But that's it. It's really a different. It's a there's very different attitudes, and that's great. It's really great, but and it's okay in the sense of you know, the gaming stores being what they are now, because, well, we don't, like, we can still publish our games, and we can, you know, it's all electronic and it's all print on
Yeah.
demand and shipped to you directly, and that's
I think that's very practical. Even we've been interviewing some people that have done Kickstarters, and I see the hell when they have all the books, and now I have to send this to everybody, and I wouldn't like to do that.
No, that's right. It's crazy. Like there's something nice about you know, offset print. Like, I've got my offset print of like Stars Without Number and Worlds Without Number. Those are great books, and that guy Kevin Crawford's done like, you know, he's got his one man publishing empire, writing and publishing empire. Like, there's nothing more to say, right? But you know, for the rest of us, print on demand is just fine.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think so.
love when I get the book, yes, that is not print on demand. I don't back a lot of Kickstarters because I know, well, it's going to take a lot of time to the book to come.
It's print on demand from Lulu, for example. If you choose the premium color option, it's very good.
Oh yeah,
There's not much difference from a real print and that. Just, of course, I don't usually select that option because the books get a bit expensive. Just the smaller ones, the scenarios, you can go for premium. When it's a game book, it's a little more expensive, so I try to avoid it. But
right.
well, as a publisher, not when I'm buying, I can go and buy what I want. But as a publisher, I try to avoid the premium. But even the other option, it's nice. It's not as nice, but it's enough.
Well, I mean, you know, and these are gaming manuals to reference and to read for practical purposes, right?
Yeah,
it's something that you know, I don't I can understand it in a way, but I don't have any. The sort of gaming books that are coffee table books, I just like I that's not what that's for, right? and that's okay if that's what you want to do. But for me, I'm like, I don't understand that. I'm using my gaming book nonstop for gaming, right? It's at the table. It's constantly open. I'm trying not to dog ear the pages, you know, and that's it, right? But yeah, so it doesn't need to be expensive or overly expensive. It just needs to be, you know, functional and work, and that's it. And it's actually something that I bring to the editing, right? It's the main, in fact, it's the main thing I do when I edit isn't, you know, organizing, and it isn't proofreading. What I do is I've told the guys, look, these aren't novels and these aren't histories. These are manuals for gamers, for referees, and for players to be inspired. I say, you know, the main thing you should be doing when you're writing is every sentence should be able to generate a hook, either a character hook, a plot hook, a campaign hook, an adventure hook, an NPC. It should be doing something, right? Anything that's setting, that's not pure mechanics, should be, its job is to make the life of the GM and even the player, but mainly the GM, easier, and generate ideas. And that's the Platonic ideal. And I say, look, I mean, we understand that there's going to be some sentences that aren't going to do that, but every sentence should do that. And it's something that, yeah, like that's the ethos for me when I edit, and, you know, and also when I use these books, because I'm not using them. Like, I remember as a kid, I would read through a setting book and be like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? But now that's not really what's happening anymore, because a lot of it is, you know, my players, I've moved to a more sandbox approach for my gaming and running games. And so my players are the ones generating the impetus, right? They're the ones getting involved in something. And so once I know where they're going, I can stay ahead of them a little bit. You don't want to get too far ahead of them, but yeah, I don't see the need for, I want to call it fluff, right? Because there's setting material, and then there's a sort of the stuff that maybe doesn't need to be there, right? If that makes any sense.
A couple of years ago, we bought a very nice, very nicely illustrated and laid out game, which is called the Genesis, which we never played, but it's very nice.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful
and very
game.
well written.
Yeah, but I didn't read it even that. It's on the shelf. Yeah, well, it was expensive, a lot of books, not just one, it's the whole collection, but it's very nice. It's very nice.
I mean, it's
I wouldn't
nice,
buy it now.
Right, like
I wouldn't buy it now.
Even worse, because I gave you the rest of the books, because when they were on sale, I bought the rest of them
we had
just
already,
to complete the collection. So
yeah,
let's just
the investment was made, so let's just finish it. I did that several times before, but not as expensive as that one, because that one was really expensive. But I had done something like that before with other games like Mutant Chronicles and Conan. Those are also very nicely done and nicely illustrated.
Yeah.
Though I would say in some cases, in case of Infinity, that's also heavier.
Yeah, that one is.
It's like you don't really care about all the live plants, the plants and the animals and in each planet.
Yeah, that's. I think that's a problem with commercial mainstream stuff. They are paying the authors, and they just write. I suppose that's the problem. They write.
Yeah, it's for me, it's better to have the tools to generate things like plants and animals and things like that. And then you roll up on the table and you have to figure out how it all works. And that's not just the intellectual exercise, but what it does is that it keeps things fresh in a way that if you had sort of planned out the encounter or planned out the adventure it keeps it fresher than if you had planned it. You know, I was at a moment. There was a moment a few years ago where I was like, have I just basically been running the same 6 adventures for the last 30 some odd years of gaming? And it was at that moment that I'm like, I need to really start using random generators more, right? And not exclusively, but yeah, you want to, you know, even if I'm, you know, I pat myself on the back and go, no, I'm original. I'm constantly original. Yeah, no, right? The random generators, they just throw curveballs, right? They just say, oh no, whatever you thought was going to happen, it goes in a different direction, and your players don't know the difference, and they're going to surprise you, and things are going to get, you know, interesting and different, and it's just neat to do that, right? And the same thing with monster generators and NPC generators and things like that. It's like, you know, instead of the same, you know, one-eyed barman giving you information, it's just something else, right? It's just something else that's a little more varied. Something that I was yeah, and we incorporated a lot of that in Cepheus Deluxe, and in Piracy and Privateering. There's a lot of that, and it's just so that, you know, it's just so that things, you can always change things. You know, of course, you don't need to follow the random generator, but at least to have those options, and they're there, and they're inspiring you in some way or another, right? So
we've only started recently using randomness, but yeah, that's
yeah, I think in
useful.
the beginning I thought, oh, no, I'm just gonna roll in a table, and these things are not gonna make sense. But no, yeah, but they can make sense.
Sometimes they don't make sense, and you have to
Yes.
re-roll it. But yeah.
Sure. But what I find is, you know, like, I don't do random encounters in the sense of like, well, they are random encounters, but I don't do them on the spot. A lot of the times I know where the players are going to be going, and so what I'll do is, in my prep, I'll roll up what they are going to encounter. And so this allows, like, I'm using the random generators, but because, you know, oh, they have an encounter here, oh, they don't have an encounter here, oh, and what's the encounter? Oh, it's nothing super crazy important. It's just a bit of texture that they can add to their game, and maybe later on they can revisit it, right? Or maybe it actually becomes what the entire session's about, right? And then, yeah, they're still going to go off and do their adventure, but they're going to have they have this moment here in a, you know, in some weird place, that doing something that no one expected to be doing, and it's just because I rolled up something, because I knew they were going to be headed to this planet X, and that was it. So so doing that beforehand is fun, and yeah, I mean, it just, like I said, it makes sure that it's giving me the reassurance that I'm not running the same adventure, you know,
Yeah.
constantly with the numbers filed off, which, I mean, geez.
So did you start with Traveler? I mean,
no,
gaming.
no. Geez. Well, I started in 1986, and I know this because I was 9 years old, and my dad had bought a D&D red box set, and it said ages 10 and up. And so I you know, and that's, you know, which one I'm talking about, that beautiful Elmore drawing with the barbarian attacking the red dragon.
I started with that one,
right?
But I started a few years later. I was
just
16 at the time.
Stunning book, right? Stunning box set. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't wait till I was 10. So I felt very, very transgressive at 9, cracking it open. And, you know, looking through it and not quite understanding exactly at first, right? So yeah, my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, so the 9-year-old and the 7-year-old are playing D&D. We're trying to muddle through D&D, and then I think we had a babysitter or something like that who actually did play, and so he would run us on AD&D adventures, and that was, yeah, we did that for a bit, and then we moved into I moved into things like Palladium, Robotech. TMNT was probably the most interesting of those. At Rifts as well. When I hit Traveller when a buddy of mine, we were playing all sorts of different games, and he brought in Mega Traveller, and that seemed cool, except that he showed me Mega Traveller by like, look at this, I can make a ship using an Excel spreadsheet, and I just totally bounced off of that. I'm like, no, this isn't for me, right? And now I can appreciate it, right? But but at the time I was like, this is so not for me. And yeah, so in the 90s it was basically everything, but we started, I actually didn't get into Traveller until I started I'm trying to think, I think I started running Traveller one-offs. Yeah, not before I joined Stella Gamma, but not too much before. Like I said, I knew about Traveller like everybody else. It was the game where you died in character generation, and that's, at the time I was like, that's ridiculous, right? And now I understand what that for. That was just part of the gambling, part of the game, right? But yeah, it was a very circular route to Traveller, I think.
I think my first experience with Traveller was, I guess it was called Travel the New Era. I think it was a very large book, 600 pages or something. That one was kind of intensive, and I think it had lots of setting as well. I think.
Well, it
much more than
well, that's the one that broke Game Designers Workshop, unfortunately.
Okay.
So
yeah, it was the 90s.
Because I remember it. I remember distinctively because we were actually playing Twilight 2000 using those rules, and then Traveller the New Era came out, and so we were sort of following along in Challenge Magazine, right? That's a thing, right? Remember, like the Challenge Magazine, Game Designers Workshop had their own RPG magazine, not just Dragon, right? With Challenge, and they sort of hinted in Challenge at stuff that was going on in the Mega Traveller Rebellion and Hard Times stuff, and then all of a sudden the New Era came out, and they advanced the timeline by like 70 years, 100 years, something like that, and they made Traveller post-apocalyptic, and a lot, like, I remember I loved that. I love post-apocalyptic, and that's why I liked Twilight 2000, because it was like it was actually, Twilight 2000 is more apocalyptic and not post-apocalyptic, right? It's still in the you're still working through the apocalypse, right? But yeah, so what they did, a lot of people I know did not enjoy the fact that they had basically trashed their own setting. They had completely set it on fire, and it was time to rebuild. And the other thing too was that the rules were Twilight 2000 2.2, which were extremely simulationist and gritty, and there was a lot. I
tried to game master it and I quit. It's not for me. Especially space combat. No, not really. I can't do this.
No. It was all vectors, and like you could, I think if I remember, you actually could, the stats of the lasers were like in megajoules or megawatts. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think there's something like that. Yeah.
It was technical. It was very technical. It's too technical. But like the setting, I have to sort of look over my shoulder to make sure that I'm saying this, because I like that. I like the fact that they did what they did and made it post-apocalyptic, because that gives stuff for the players to do that's really important, right? And it's something that I really like, the sort of frontier settings. I like the places where the players really matter, and yeah, that's why things like we made Terra Arisen, because it was like, let's make a Traveller setting, or a 2d6 science fiction Cepheus Deluxe setting where what the players do is really important and can be really important and can actually turn the tide of diplomacy and warfare and things like that. And post-apocalyptic is settings are great that way too, for the same reason, right? Because you're the only ones that can make a difference, and that makes it that makes the stakes really high without it having to be, world-ending apocalypses. It could just be like, no, you're the ones who are going to save this community. You're the ones who are going to cure the disease, that sort of stuff. It's meaningful and it's fun. So yeah, I like the new era setting. Crazy, creepy vampire ships with sentient virus run by sentient viruses, computer viruses, are insane. That's some intense stuff. But yeah, that's a setting that I don't think gets as much love as it should at all. Yeah. Let's see. Oh yeah, I wanted to tell you. You asked me the other day about like satanic panic, and
yeah.
In Canada we didn't really have the satanic panic in the same way. If we did, it just came up from the United States in the way that everything everything comes up from the United States a lot of the times, good and bad. But what I had a very specific, there was something very specific that happened in Victoria when I moved there that really colored the way I became a gamer, or was a gamer in the 90s and on. There was a very, very grisly double murder that had happened just as I had arrived, or just before, like a couple months before, in either 89 or 90, that it came out that these three kids murdered their these three kids. The ringleader was the game master, and his two players murdered their grandmother and their aunt for an inheritance, and it was really grisly. And oh yeah, it wasn't just that, like, it was on the news, and it was like, oh, these three Dungeons and Dragons players got together and in their Dungeons and Dragons games they conspired to commit this horrible murder. All that was actually true. What was really for me was that I went to their high school. So their teachers were my teachers, and they're talking about, like, oh yeah, that kid sat right over there, right? And I'm like, I am not talking about my hobby at all in school, ever. And I mean, I had friends at school who played D&D with me, but I just did not talk about it in school because of that, or very rarely, right? And certainly not when when we had like guidance counselors and police officers come in for drug education and things like that, or anything like that. No, I just did not want to talk about that stuff at all. So yeah, it was.
So you got used not to talking about your hobby.
I got very used to being very quiet about it, which is, I mean, in retrospect, is like a little silly, right? But it wasn't just one teacher who was like, yeah, it was that kid. The kid sat where you're sitting. It was like a few of them who, talked about it openly, and so it was just, I think we're gonna keep quiet. And yeah, so ever since then, it was something that I totally did, once a week. I've been running games once a week mostly since the 90s, right? And that's it, with some major breaks for sure, but most of the time. And it's only been more recently that I'm like, yeah, we're gonna have we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna go on YouTube and have an interview. And my wife's been very supportive, and my eldest daughter is 8, and so I've run OSE, Old School Essentials, for her, and that's great. But yeah, it's still a little weird. It's a little weird talking about this stuff openly.
Yeah, that's right. We almost gave up 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean gave up?
Gave up on
Give up
playing.
playing because when well, right before I started writing, when COVID started, our group, well, not just because of COVID, it would have ended anyway.
Yeah, one
because
of our players moved. Yeah,
yeah,
for
so
the
he was moving anyway. So, and we weren't playing online at the time. Now we are always playing online.
Yeah.
It's the only way. That's
I-
well, for us it's the only way. There's a problem here because there's not that much people playing in that many people playing in Portugal. We haven't started yet trying to play with people from other countries. That's probably in our future, but there's a problem with
time
the
zones.
yeah,
Yeah.
scheduling things, so it's not not that easy. It would be
Yeah.
easier with people in Europe, but I don't know, maybe. But the Portuguese community, well, we're never inside the Portuguese role-playing community, so it's we don't have many
Yes,
friends here, and
I've heard recently what
yeah,
happened about, you know, oof.
kind
Yeah,
of
just
ridiculous.
remember,
Yeah, well,
never be part of a club that would have you as a member, right?
Yeah, that's it.
yeah. Well, and the people that we know that play, they already have their groups, so
Yeah,
they don't have.
they
They're
are
already
game
busy,
masters.
so it's like they have their game mastering or they have their group, so it's hard for them to have time, even if they want to come and play with other people.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's really, I've made it a habit actually to sort of, well, recruit. And I'm a little pushy about it because if I wasn't, then I wouldn't have half my players,
Mhm.
right? So I have one group I've been playing with since like 2006 for it's a long time now, and most of that crew has been pretty constant for that whole time. But I have my other group, yeah, almost entirely like either complete newbies or like just people I've met along the way, and I'm like, oh, you're a gamer, great, let's play a game together, right? And then, you know, when I was doing my education degree, there was a guy who had also moved from Montreal to do the same program in Ottawa, and I knew he was a super nerd because you talk to him about things, and then it turns out that he was using one of the things he was suggested to do was to use role-playing game character generators to make characters for stories that you were going to write. And he says, yeah, I've done this a lot with Call of Cthulhu. And I'm like, oh, really? And then when we both moved back, well, he's been in my group since 2015, right? Because if I didn't, like, I wouldn't have a group. And it's really, yeah, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. Online has been helpful, in that I can play with people that I've never met. I think I played Savage Worlds for the first time, like a whole summer 2020. I played all Savage Worlds once a week with a group from across North America, and that was amazing. Except for the fact that it was all online. Like, it's doable online, but oh man, like it's just not the same as in person.
No,
It's just
it's not.
You know?
I had when we started, I was kind of thinking about this probably is not going to work, but then it works. It works. You get used to it. If you start just for 2 years or maybe more, we have just played online, so it's kind of an habit now. I would prefer not to do it, but well, it's better than nothing.
You can't get the people to come.
Yeah, which kind of strange because one of the players lives in the same town, and the other one doesn't live very far. So
yeah,
we could play. We could get together to play, but well, we don't. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, one of them probably lives 5 minutes from us, and the other is 10 minutes or something like that, 15 minutes.
It's not a question of really. It's not really a question of time, though. It's time anyway. They would have to get out of their homes and.
It's the whole thing. Yeah, it's the whole thing. It's time. It's commuting. It's energy.
Yeah.
It's what would I rather? What would be easier, right? And I get it, right? You know, one of the games I run in my house And so everyone comes to me, and that's great. And the other game, I go out. And, that means every other week, there's, in addition to the classes I teach at night, every other week, there's an additional night where I'm out of the house. And, there's more pressure on my wife in terms of the kids and in terms of all that stuff. And, she pushes me out the door. She's like, she pushes me out the door, pushes me into the basement. She's like, go play your game. You need the mental vacation, right? You go do it, right? She, like I said, she's the one who pushed me into Stella Gamma, right? No problem. But it's
So
there's a
you're
lot of
lucky.
energy.
You're lucky about that, because that's not very usual, I think.
Well, I'll give a tip to anyone who's trying to convince their significant other that they should be gaming more. This comes from one of my players who he said, at first it was kind of weird. My wife would be like, why are you, or my girlfriend, my wife would be like, why are you playing these games? Why don't you do stuff that's normal, right? and he says, so you want me to go to bars and spend like a chunk of my paycheck on beer and have all these, women hanging around and doing all this stuff that might be a little questionable? Or would you rather me stay at home or go to Josh's house? Well, it wasn't me, but like go to a guy's house where there's a whole bunch of guys, real super nerds, sitting in a basement playing a game and maybe eating some tortillas or some tortilla chips, right? So then the next time he was gaming, his wife gave him like a whole platter of food to bring to the boys, right? It was like, yeah, you do that, right?
Yeah,
Because
this
is a very wholesome hobby. What? Sorry?
It's a harmless hobby, exactly.
It exactly. This is super wholesome, right? I mean, like it is good. Like Mark Miller, a guy who wrote Travelers, he says it's good, clean fun. And yeah, you guys with the Red Room do a lot of more adult content. It's still a very wholesome hobby, right? This is like, I can't think of a hobby that's more wholesome. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's something to keep in mind, right? And yeah, but yeah, for us, it's the online stuff. It's great. It kept us all going during COVID, right? I was running games, I was playing games. It was and it was all from the comfort of my basement office here. But oh man, it was so good to get back into a room with a bunch of players. Everything flowed more naturally, and the dice and the jokes, and also the fact that no one's talking over each other, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
well, you can even talk, have different conversations, because it's not a problem. Here you can't really do that, unless you use some kind of Zoom allows that. But well, and I probably wouldn't be able to proceed doing this online if I was using some of those Roll20, or I don't like it.
Yeah, we just play once.
I don't think it works.
We don't use
it's good for other stuff. You can roll the dice and show the maps, but then for the communication, it's awful.
Yeah, we use what do we use? Either Zoom or Discord.
Yeah, Discord probably works.
Or with Roll20 with all the video shut off. Yeah, Roll20, it works. It works. It takes a little while to get used to the interface. It's I think I would prefer a whiteboard, just a plain whiteboard software, but the functionality of, like, especially once you get a character sheet that's automated that does a lot of the work for it, that's pretty nice. But yeah, it's so much nicer to be able to do this again in person. And,
that's why. Well, with Zoom, you can you're looking at the players and not. If you want to show the map, you're looking at the people,
experience.
And not
as
the maps and
as a communication device. It's much. It's almost like being close to the other guys.
I suppose if you share screen and stuff, you could do like you show maps.
Yeah,
and
you
stuff
can.
like that.
It's possible,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Depends
you
what you're
just-
playing. If it's something that you really need to have the map there all the time, it's well, you can just share the screen anyway.
Right.
It's possible to do that, but in that case, that you just have
And you need to
small
trust your
windows.
players are not gonna
Oh yeah,
fudge the dice.
there's that problem, of
Which
course.
let's be honest, we have a player in our group that we think is always cheating because he takes.
we
He
would
fails very
never-
little.
Yeah.
We would never accuse any players of cheating whatsoever, ever. No.
But
Yeah.
okay, so that's not really a problem when you're 40 something.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
I'm
okay,
50, I don't care.
you want to shit on the dice, then shit on the dice.
Too old for that shit now.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, exactly. It's gonna happen, and that's it. But no, it's that actually I have a reputation of being very, very fortunate with dice. I don't know why. I'm lucky on dice rolls. I've never pushed it. I've never gone to play like to gambling, but there was like to casinos for gambling. But I have a buddy of mine who he was like, yeah, we used to think you were fudging the dice rolls behind the gem screen. And remember that time we made you roll everything out in the open? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, we realized you weren't fudging the rolls. I'm like, I know, man. It's one of the, I don't know why. Just even if it's like a 1%, I don't know why. It's just something we've noticed. But
Yeah, I'm terribly unlucky, both when I'm game mastering or when I'm a player.
When I'm a game master, I find that I have there was just recently a big fight in one of my groups, and yeah, they didn't walk all over my opponents, but I totally flubbed the dice rolls. The big monster just completely was not hitting at all, and they were rolling. I think there was something like 4 natural 20s on their end. I'm like, wow, guys, you're just you're crushing it. Okay, I guess it's your night.
I think I had a time that I just give up. You won. My dice are awful.
Oof. Yeah. What do you guys use for dice online if you're not on Roll20?
I use real dice. Not
Okay.
the players. The players use some phone app, but I think the problem is the phone app. It's not. I don't trust it. I think that it's not really random. But well, I like to use the real dice. It makes it a little real.
And the cats also like it.
Yeah.
Right.
The cats love it.
Yeah. No, we have no cats, but my 4-year-old, she definitely likes dice. Yeah.
Yeah, we have 4 cats, so it's when we were playing on the table, it was a problem. We
didn't have 4 cats at the time. If we had people at the house now, it would be lit. I imagine the 4 cats jumping.
Yeah, that would be a problem because they aren't used to visits. So if you had 4 or 5 visitors, they would get excited. Well, they get excited anyway. Usually, it hasn't. She didn't come here today, but there's one that when she sees me here talking to someone on the camera, she sits on my lap. She needs the attention.
Yes. I respect cats, but I'm allergic to cats, so I not seriously, but just serious enough that when I go to my in-laws, they have 2 cats, and one of them's a Persian, and so I can break out in hives.
Yeah, there's a lot of fur.
Yeah.
And I respect them, but I also know that the only reason they haven't conquered the planet is because they need someone to open the tuna tin.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. No, it's you gotta know where you stand on the totem pole of their priorities. It's like you're a live human because
yeah.
Oh, no.
So do you have any plans for stuff that will come out from for Cepheus
right. We gotta so Cepheus Deluxe Enhanced Edition should be out this month. Richard is finishing up Superpowered, which is a really neat set of rules for playing superheroes. using the Quantum engine. So we have the Cepheus Deluxe engine, and then we pared down Omer pared down the Cepheus Deluxe down to Quantum, which is 2d6 plus a bonus. That's it, like just a stat modifier. Like 12 skills that are also attributes, that sort of thing, right? Really simple. And so Richard is finishing up that, and that should be out, I think, in time for the holidays. Right now, I'm working on. We have a new addition to the Stella Gamma collective. I don't want to say family, cult. I don't know. Robert has been publishing stuff for a little while, and he joined us just like last month, I think. And so I've been editing something called Solar Sagas, which is I think he's calling it Planet Punk, but it's kind of like Diesel Punk meets Buck Rogers, sort of. Pulp. I don't know exactly how to describe it. Also for Quantum Engine, and so that's being edited right now. This is the first time he's being edited by me, so I apologize in advance. And so that's coming out soonish. I don't know. Let's see what else. Omer's asked me to write a couple of adventures for Terra Arisen, which is our Cepheus Deluxe setting. And so that's my next little project. I'm going to do some. I've never really done these before, but like 16 to 24 page adventures, just for just to see what we can do with the setting. And then I think that's on the short term. I think that's what's on the horizon. If you're in Montreal in August of this coming year, I've been asked to run a game at Otakuthon, which is it's an anime convention in Montreal, and so I'm going to be running Cepheus Deluxe, maybe Quantum Starfarer or some Quantum Engine stuff at Otakuthon. I don't know yet, and that's 11-12 months away, something like that, 10 months away. Aside from that, Omer's gonna. I'm sure I'm missing something, and I'm gonna get it from Omer and Richard, sure. But I think that's it. We've been pretty busy. Not as busy as you guys. No. There's no way.
We're insane. We're all insane.
I mean, wow. Like I've got a set of mecha rules for Cepheus Deluxe and Quantum Engine that I've been sort of noodling away at for the last 6 months, right? And I don't know how you guys get things done as quickly as you do. I really don't. So hey,
Miguel is hyper productive.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think he can't take it easy. He takes it. This is a job. Then.
Yeah.
No, fair enough.
Yeah. Well, 7 hours a day, maybe around that.
Yeah.
So it
makes me look like I do
to...
nothing, and on my because sometimes I stopped working and still edit.
That's a problem because I'm enjoying this, which is kind of strange. I never enjoyed working till now. Right, that's the first time in my life that I enjoy working. Right. I never enjoyed working before, so I'm still in that phase of the thing that I'm enjoying work, and well, it's something very strange for me. So while I'm enjoying it, amazing. I'll keep producing stuff.
Absolutely. That's the thing. That's exactly it. It's something that if you fall into that and you're like, this is great, then just keep at it. No, I've been watching you guys like, whoa, like, there's so much, and just to start looking through it, I'm like, this is great, and I really I really appreciate being asked to get the interview. I was not expecting that, that's for sure. But wow.
I think the time wasn't that good for having
Yeah, it's too early for
people watching,
yeah.
but I think there was some someone.
No problem. I'm
Bob Bursch, he talked about Roll20 in Discord. It's a comment,
Yeah.
not a question. So
Yeah,
he
but
said
he
if
says
you want a whiteboard type experience, try Owlbear Rodeo with Discord.
I never heard about
Owlbear.
Owlbear Rodeo.
I don't know what is
Yeah.
it. Is it a software or something like that?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that irks me about Roll20 is just like I can't copy paste something onto the board, right? And that's like it's not the end of the world, right? But that's actually why we went with Discord. Was like, oh, you can just copy paste something right into Discord. Amazing, right? Like, oh, here's it's not usually maps, but things like files and just oh, here's an image, right? Yeah, there's a I think the most important thing, the biggest change for me was when I got 2 screens on my rig. And once that happened, I was like, oh, I can actually run these games online, and it worked. I did it for work because I had to teach online, and if you think gaming online is rough, I invite you to try teaching math online.
Yeah, probably it's difficult. Yes.
I don't want to. Yeah, the dark times. Yeah, that was was no good. That was really, yeah. And it's funny too because I see it my colleagues who teach at the local junior colleges here in Quebec, in Montreal, the CEGEPs. They're like, yeah, we're noticing the ones that the students who came in, who started learning algebra online, and now their algebra skills are the pits. And it's like, yep. It's so yeah, no, not
it's terrible. 2 years. Yeah.
No.
I saw it with my niece, but well, it was lucky because she was she actually started school after COVID, so she was on preschool, still on online, but it was really hard. And you want to make kids that are on preschool age to be online talking with the teachers, and then some of them are upset because the teacher was ignoring them. But of course, why do I have to sit here and look at the computer or the nothing is happening?
So yeah, my eldest daughter was in kindergarten when the shutdown happened in March 2020, and it was like, just to be blunt, it was a shit show. It was a complete mess, and everyone was just doing their best. My favorite though, my nephews, my eldest nephew, he basically videoed himself against the background and then just would walk off the he totally pulled the I've got the textbook open but the comic book inside, that the online version of that. And yeah, that was when I heard about that, I was like, oh bad boy. On the one hand you got to pat him on the back, the other hand you're like, oh, you shouldn't do that, you really shouldn't do that and get caught, you really shouldn't do that and get caught. But yeah, no, it's but no, for gaming, it works, and I've seen a lot of I've played a fair amount. I have some of my buddies are playing like 4 nights a week, and that's amazing. But it's all online, and you're like, okay, I mean, there's certainly a place for it. I just you lose the same thing that you lose when you're in a classroom together, when you're around a table together or doing a thing together, right? And that's unfortunate, but it's definitely, the online paradigm has definitely opened up gaming in other ways. So that's good. I don't know.
Yeah, it is improved. We have, I think we have one more person watching. I don't know, Calvanoni. But
oh, there I am. Okay,
yeah.
hang on. I don't want to. Oh, I see. I'm behind. Okay, no, I'm gonna
Yeah, it's creepy. It's weird because
it's very distracting.
Yeah, you need to take the sound off YouTube because it's very distracting. Yeah, because it's all.
Well, that's a problem with Zoom. That's not. It wasn't made for this, but since we are using it for other stuff,
Yeah.
we thought about using Streamworks for the interviews and
StreamYards.
StreamYards. Yes.
What about something like is Twitch? Is that something that works, or is it?
Yeah, I don't know. Never used it.
I don't know. Yeah, I know people use it for streaming, for playing.
Yes, yeah, they use it for playing, especially for games, right?
Now we have a question from Bob Burst.
Oh yeah.
Any more settings like Barbaric, where you use the engine in a different setting, and how? It's actually
two questions.
2 questions, yes.
So the first question was, are there other settings for like Barbaric?
Like Barbaric,
so
yeah.
I know that Zoser Games put out a this is Paul Elliott, who he's super productive as well. And he put out something for Barbaric. Let me look where it I can't remember what it's called. He put out an Atlantis setting, right, where it's very much a sword and sandal, I think a little more sword and sandal sort of setting. I'm completely drawing a blank here. Hang on,
I think I have that one. I'm not sure, but I think I have that one. I can't remember the name.
Yeah, it's bugging me because
I'm looking for it now.
Okay. So they put out a setting. I think there's a 2d6. I don't know if it's for Cepheus Engine or for the same Barbaric. That's a Viking thing. But
is it Zenobia?
Not Zenobia. It's something else here. Hang on a second.
No, that's the one I have. Zenobia.
Yeah. Hang on. I'm just gonna look on drive-through because it's a neat game. And the other question was, what was the other question?
I think that's the third one.
How much do you feel the system affects common role-playing tasks like perception?
Right. So this is like the question, right? And depending on how you're feeling about I think that system, you can't get away from system. There's no escaping it, right? It's called Warlords of Atlantis, and so that's just this.
You were close. It was Atlantis.
There's something here called 43 AD. This seems interesting.
Yeah, that's another. But I think that's all 2d6 Cepheus Engine stuff that Paul Elliott's put out. Yeah. But okay, so in terms of system and setting stuff and tasks, it's actually, look, it comes up because, for example, in Traveler, there's no stealth and there's no I'm talking original, like classic Traveler, there's no stealth skill and there's no perception skill. There's recon, right? And you kind of have to figure out what that means. And so skills do a couple of things, because not only do they tell you what the character can do, but they actually define the kinds of game you're playing, in the sense of like, okay, no, this is what we expect there to be. And it's the same with like the careers in Traveler, the careers in Cepheus Deluxe, right? It's something we go into in Cepheus Deluxe at the back, right? Look, if these are the careers that exist in the setting, then these are the sorts of games and the sorts of stories that you might want to tell, because this is what it does. And so the same thing happens with skills, right? You have, if you have a perception skill, then you're going to be rolling it, because that's what you do, right? And that's good to a point. But it also, you know, a lot of players and a lot of GMs, and I'm one of them, right? We can lean on those, you can lean on notice skills too heavily, right? It comes up a lot if you're playing like if you're running a murder mystery or any kind of mystery, you can't use that skill, which is counterintuitive. You'd think that having the notice skill would be perfect for a murder adventure, but it's not. In fact, it's the opposite. You know, and if you, I was playing in a gumshoe game, and so this is a system designed specifically for mysteries, right? When you walk into a scene, you should be given clues just as default, and then if you start spending skills, like spending like your resources, your skill resources, you get extra stuff for free. And then if you ask the right questions or do something, you know, something else, then you might get, you know, there might be more. But the idea here being that you can't have the skill actually act as a gatekeeper or a roadblock to the adventure. And so a notice skill, when a notice skill is actually a bad thing in games where the characters are expected to notice things so that the adventure can move forward, because that's like, well, then what, right? If, oh, you didn't notice the clue, well, I guess we're you know, we're gonna play another game then, because adventure's over. Well, so the same thing happens with Cepheus Deluxe, right? I mean, game, skills like small arms and melee and things like that. That's just whatever, right? That's you know, you've got to have how good you are at shooting and how good you are at punching people and things like that, and how good you are at sciencing and, you know, making verbs out of other nouns and things like that. Right? But the issue with system is that you have to, you know, yeah, depending on the game, right? Recon might be a great skill because you're playing a sort of military game and you're going to have someone being the recon guy, right? And that means that they're scouting out threats, they're being sneaky, right? But what about a game where it's, you know, there's also an investigate skill in a lot of Traveller iterations and Cepheus engine iterations. And investigate and recon, they have a lot of overlap. Well, I don't know, maybe you have to be very specific as to where they draw the line, right? Or there's a stealth skill, and stealth, stealth and recon might overlap, and what does that mean, right? Well, that's okay. It means that players and their characters can have different ways of navigating a problem, right? And they have different skill sets, but they might be able to do some of the same things, and that's okay. But other times, yeah, you might have real, it's something to think about when you start a game and you look at the skills. One thing it took me a little while, but I really liked what happened in Stars Without Number Revised, right? In the first Stars Without Number, it was very, well, the skills were basically Traveller skills, more or less. I mean, there was even a Steward skill, which, if you're a Traveller fan, is either the coolest skill or you're like, why is this still here, right?
I think it's, you know, there's no other game with a skill like that one.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think and it's still there in Cepheus Engine. We did we remove it in Cepheus Deluxe? I can't remember. if we didn't, it was I think I probably wanted to remove it. But what they did in Stars Without Number is in the revised version is they made all the skills verbs, which, like, at first I was like, what? Where's my sneak skill? Where's my stealth skill? Now it's called sneak. And at first I was like, this sucks. And then all of a sudden you realize what it means, right? Because you know, if you can make the sentence with this verb, then you can roll it. And that was a cool way of thinking about it, right? I'm going to sneak past the guard. I'm going to sneak this pistol into the party, right? It's the same skill, even though they're different. It's, you know, one in a more traditional sense, one would be stealth and the other one would be sleight of hand or something like that, palming or whatever it's called, right? But now it's just sneak, and so you can reduce the number of skills, which increases the the competency of the character without having to build up a whole bunch of multiple skills and multiple levels and multiple skills. And there's some part of me that's very traditional science fiction is like, no, you got to have skill specialization, you got to have that narrowing, because this way you have the guy who's really good at fixing nuclear engines and nuclear and the other tech, and she's really good at fixing electronics, and it's not, even though it's the same fix, it's you have to have that specialization. And then I was like, well, I suppose, but my players just want to be able to fix things.
Exactly. So then you go up to, and that's what happened to me in games with a lot of skills. Then there's always, oh, I didn't put points on this skill, and this is the one that I need right now.
Exactly. And it's a different, it's a different feel sometimes. But overall, I think Stars Without Number did this. I know we did this in Cepheus Deluxe, in part because I was playing a lot of Stars Without Number, and I was like, we don't need, cascade skills for, small arms. We just need small arms. We don't need melee we don't need unarmed combat and swords and cudgels and all that. We just need melee combat, and that's it, right? It's really like Savage Worlds does this very well, I think. And you can expand the skill list a bit if you need to, but it's really nice in ways to keep the skills a little more general, so that the players and their characters are more competent. They have more options. I don't know if this answers the question. Maybe it does, but it's for things like. Go ahead.
There was a question, but I don't know. There was a delay.
Asking,
so which game was that? But I don't know.
So I don't know.
I don't know what we're talking about.
If it was when we were mentioning the Gumshoe game, because the other one we've been talking, it starts without numbers.
Maybe.
Yeah. So Gumshoe was. I think it was just. I'm trying to remember. It was a buddy of mine who just decided he wanted to run a murder mystery set in 1920s New York City, and so. It was he found Gumshoe because he wanted something that was very narrative and very focused on the mystery stuff and the RP, and less about combat, and less about.
There's something Lovecraftian for that.
The one with verb skills. That is world without numbers. Right.
Yeah.
So
it's Stars Without Number.
Stars Without Number. Yes.
It started with Stars Without Number, and now it's in Worlds Without Number, and it'll be in, I'm sure, Cities Without Number, the next one that's coming up, the cyberpunk version. It's a great way of moving forward in terms of making skills work for the characters and for the players. We probably. I don't know if we're gonna do much more revising of Cepheus Deluxe. I think we've got it down to under 30 skills, definitely around 20 to 25 skills. So I think that's probably okay. We did a lot of the same, right? I was just like, look, we don't need to have a broker skill and a talk skill and a barter skill and a bribe skill. Let's just have we called it liaison, or we took the liaison skill and made it everything, right? This is the skill you need if you want to get deals and talk to people and persuade them, right? And then the same thing with I think we have with the fixing skill, I think it's just there's one skill, maybe two, right? Same thing with anything electronics, like using electronics and using communications. It's all just the comm skill, right? And computers, it's all just computers. That's it, right? Anything that's just interacting with electronics is computer skill, because sure, you can have a whole bunch of miniature skills for it, but in the end, the players need to be able to be pretty competent and the characters need to be pretty competent, and everything just needs to work, right? And the adventure is not served by having roadblocks like that. Yeah, it's better to just have the characters be able to do things that they need to do. So, you know, also it helped lock in things like ship combat, where you don't need more than 4 or 5 players to have a full crew on a ship. And this way, one player is the computer player, one's the one character is the pilot, and one's the fix, one's the captain, and one's the gunner, and that's it.
Yeah, because
right?
that's the problem. If you have too much specialization, if you don't have a big group, you're gonna miss something.
That's right.
And then you
That's
have to have NPC to get the stuff done.
Yeah, and the NPC is fine, but sometimes you don't want that. You want to have just like, no, it's the crew, and the crew is the people sitting around the table. So, all right. Are we? I think. Were there other questions? Should we?
I'm checking it. Yeah.
Okay.
No, there's a comment from Bob Burrs about Gumshoe, but no questions. No more questions. At least no, I don't think so.
Gumshoe was cool. It was.
I never tried that.
Right. Yeah. There's a blog called The Alexandrian, and I remember when my buddy Josh was like, I want to be able to run this mystery. I said, well, you got to read this one blog post, and it's about the 3 clue rule, right? Where and don't
I read that.
Don't roadblock with skills, right? So
I guess we have too many skills in Ratchet.
Yeah,
probably.
well, but you don't really need them, because you can always. They're not very specific. I think there's you can. You can use more than one.
Seduction, persuasion, charm, carousing.
Yeah. Okay.
But this is a.
And look, this is something that, you know. Well, look, you guys are taking OSR stuff. You're tacking on some 3rd edition sort of feel to the skills, and that's fine, right? One thing that I've done in my games is also the players. If the players, even if their characters are not skilled, if the players figure something out, then it's good, right?
Yeah,
like the player competency, even if it's a little metagamey, always beats out character skill.
Exactly.
Right? And that's the way to do it, because it means that, oh yeah, like, because look, you're rewarding the player engagement, which is absolutely crucial, right?
We had some situations when we were playing, I think it was with Mutant Chronicles, that we had a guy that his roles were, I think it was for not perception.
Persuasion?
Persuasion, exactly. His role was really high, but so what do you say? And he said something pretty stupid, but his role was really high.
Yeah,
and that is like, but try to do
that's the opposite of it.
This is actually the most difficult. I think in a lot of ways the most difficult thing to adjudicate is, how do you play a character who's not like you as a player, and you know, you want the skill to mean something, the character skill to mean something, but you want the player's role playing to mean as much, if not more. And
exactly,
look, sometimes, you know, a player's on, right, and they come up with this brilliant oration that you know, makes it right, and it works, and you're like, okay, good, we're going, right? And other times it's like, I want them to follow me into the gates of hell. I'm rolling 2d6. Oh, I rolled a 10. They're going to follow me in the gates of hell, right? It's like, well, what are you going to say to them, right? It's like, well, you should follow me. And you're like,
try, you know,
it's an evening. Everyone's worked a full day, and like, okay, we're just gonna have to roll with this, because no one has the energy left. But yeah, that's what that's a really
he ended up laughing. Well, I think in one of the semesters, that's okay. That's a really bad, but It
Yes,
works.
well, yeah, the rule worked, so what am I
Yeah.
gonna do? I asked
Yeah.
for the rule, so I'll have to accept it.
Well, that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a problem with the things that the social skills, because if you're just saying, okay, I'm going to fix that thing, I'm not going to answer what I'm not going to ask what the guy is going to do, right? That's you just do it.
Because even if
The
you're going to
character does
say,
it.
you don't know if he's right or not, or
Yeah,
if
I don't
that's
know.
going to work.
I can't
Right.
work. I can't fix things, so I wouldn't
Right.
understand anyway. So,
But
but
that's exactly
the social skills, it's
it.
different.
That's exactly it, right? And especially since the character, the player has invested the points in a specific direction, they want to be rewarded. So you have to reward them, because it's the same as if they're the characters, the melee combatant, and they've got like high levels in those skills. Well, of course they're going to do well in combat. So you want the player to be able to have their character do well in social interactions, but you also don't want to take away from like the thing that we can actually do at the table.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
We have to talk
So yeah.
anyway. So
Yeah. So
and sometimes I
important
don't ask for the rule. I just let it go.
Oh, if
If it
absolutely,
works, it works.
if they can make it work, like if they can convince you, even like I've got one player who's playing a character with like a 7 intelligence, right? He's the gunman, and like he's the sniper, he's the gun bunny. He's actually got a good wisdom score, but intelligence not so much. So he's playing a caricature of like a hick. Okay. But the player comes up with all sorts of cool ideas, and in the science fiction, and he's like, he knows what's going on. So I'm like, well, you're gonna have it, because I'm not gonna, oh no, you're engaged with my setting, you're engaged with my game, and you're metaing a little. Well, all right, fine,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that happened to me once. I was playing a character that's supposed to be the brute in the group, but I ended up I was the person that was more social. So my character, it was like, it's not working. I'm not supposed to be the social character.
Even though
Right.
the violent character can be social,
Yeah.
different way.
I was the damn violent character, but
Yeah,
I
but
ended up.
the dumb and brute
Yeah.
is a problem with that. But yeah, that's that happens sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, as long as everyone's enjoying it, and it's moving everything in one direction, or I should say the right direction or directions, then
Yeah, you have to accept some things that
yeah,
sometimes
it's okay.
doesn't make much sense, but okay.
Yeah, and it's that whole like, this is the in a way, this, especially in an OSR sort of feel, right? This is the meta currency, isn't it? Right? Like, there's no bennies, there's no plot points, there's nothing like that. But the meta currency is the fact that the player can actually be smart enough to figure something out. And oh, the character has a sudden bolt of inspiration, and
Well, it
that's
happens.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's something that happens to everybody once in a while. Actually, I thought for a moment that I would use Cepheus as an engine at the beginning. I don't know if I've mentioned that or not.
I've been following on the videos that you guys have been doing about the critique of too many hit points.
Yeah.
And so I run these Stars Without Number games, right? And I do it despite the fact that I hate hit points in armor class, right? I hate them, right? But the thing is that it works, and it works, right? But at a certain point, the characters once they're they high level characters, let's just say that there's an evolving attitude towards violence in games with high hit points, right? And that around level 5, if there's 10 levels, around level 5 things start to change, right? And OSR stops being oh shit run. You have the ability to really, like, you don't have to plan as hard as you used to, because you can take a couple hits and you're still going to beat the bad guys most of the time. So I mean, what I'm doing actually in my games is I'm stopping hit points at level 6. They get more skills, everything else continues, but they only get 6 hit dice. Then after that, they get any bonus hit points from any sort of special abilities per level, but they don't get any more hit dice. Because yeah, the players themselves were like, we are missing out on the sense of peril. And I'm like, oh, interesting. Now, that's one way to go. Another way is to lower the number of like the hit dice that they get in terms of like, so instead of giving a D8 to a fighter, you give them a D6, right? And it becomes, or a D3 to the like, you get really low hit points, which is a way to do it. Or you go for something like Cepheus. And yeah, Cepheus, you can burn through characters if you're not careful, right? Because like, depending on the game, there's man portable fusion guns, and it's like, okay, that's going to mess people up, right? Vaporize them, and
you get shot, you die.
Oh yeah, but even stuff with like that was something that we were very careful about with the armor ratings and the damage ratings in Cepheus Deluxe, right? Is if you the moment there's a specific suit of armor that everyone buys, that it's broken, right? Like the moment that everyone goes for the joke at one of my tables is medium flak, and that's from a game called Heavy Gear, right? Where it was just enough protection that it was you were immune to small arms without taking a penalty to your agility, right? Once if there's something like that exists, then that it's broken. And so that was something we did with Cepheus Deluxe, was we were very careful, where we look at the average damage that these weapons do, and you think, okay, well, that's the average damage to an average person, and armor should probably take away about half of average damage, maybe a little more or a little less depending on what, right? And yeah, it makes it a very lethal game, especially in settings where you have guns but you don't have body armor, or very, very flimsy body armor, right? Like Belle Epoque, right, would be, what I love about that is that I could run Wretched Epoch in Cepheus with like almost no effort. I can just find some, just basically change the skills and careers a little bit. Someone's already done it, I'm sure. Yeah, his name is Michael Brown. I want to plug him. He makes you guys look like you're slow. He produces stuff.
I know his name.
Unbelievable, right? And so he's done stuff for like a sort of noir 1920s, which would fit in terms of the skills, right? But yeah, Belle Epoque there's no body armor per se, right? And so yeah, I mean, one gun can really mess people up. One pistol can mess people up, and that's kind of what you want. Well, depending on the kind of game you're playing. So yeah, this is that sort of thing. That's a way you could go as well, is Cepheus Deluxe or Cepheus Engine. If there's lots of choices, and the difference is though is that those characters, like Cepheus Engine doesn't have character advancement, I don't think. Cepheus Deluxe, we have it, right? And we have some rules in Cepheus Deluxe to make the game less gritty, or a little more survivable, a little more pulpy if you want, right? But if you play it without the hero point rules, then yeah, it can be pretty gruesome for characters. But they can advance, but it's slow, and when they do advance, there's no hit points, right? It's just you have your pool of lifeblood and your pool of stamina, and that's it, right? And that'll keep a character alive for like 1 or 2 hits, but then after that, forget it. So that stuff is like, there's lots of options for a game like, well, what was it like? That was something that the pundit said, right?
Yeah.
It's like too many
Yeah.
hit points, right?
Too many hit
Yeah,
points for a
sure.
country.
Sure. I mean, it depends on it. You know, it's funny because it really depends. I remember reading up about this in Challenge magazine, right? Game Designers Workshop. They had all these, you know, because a lot of their games were about modern combat and guns and stuff like that. And so they actually did some research, and there's like there's reports, like FBI reports of like criminals taking like 20 bullets before they go down. And not the ones on PCP, not the ones who are like totally out to lunch, right? Just standard gunfights where no one hit anything important. So
that can happen.
And so and especially with Old West style guns, some of them are pretty nasty, but then others aren't. And you know, the consistency of those firearms was lower than they are now, and the bullets and the powder loads and things like that. So I mean, it really depends on
you can if the person really wants to keep the system, you can just find an explanation. It was just it wasn't, you weren't really shot, it was just a graze wound, so it's not
that's right. That's right. Or you know, just a flesh wound. It
hurts,
but it'll be okay. And it also depends on how you play out hit points, right? Because hit points can just be a combination of luck and cover and
I was thinking when
experience.
last time we played, when we played Red's New Flesh with my character, although it's supposed to be not a man at arms, a woman of arms, my dices were really bad, so I had really low hit points. And so on the first session, I ended up in the hospital, and then I had to play with my secondary character, who it's not a combat character. So then I was almost dying again in the second session.
And those characters are
level 5 or level 7, I'm not sure.
5 or 6, so they aren't that bad, they aren't beginners.
Yeah,
well, anyway, the next game
really depends.
The next game we will in fact reduce, because it's a horror game, so we are going to reduce the hit points. Just one hit point per level, and I think
that's a good way of doing it. That you could go like, I think Cepheus actually would do pretty well for horror, because it also allows for decent character development, right? If you use like
that was the initial thing before we started with Ratchet. We were thinking about doing a horror Cepheus game, which is this one. So, well, kind of the idea, but it's going to appear now as a Ratchet game, a horror Ratchet game.
You also might want to check out Silent Legions, which is also by Kevin Crawford, right? It starts with a number.
Yeah.
So he did. That's a horror game with a full-blown random mythos generator. And what's interesting about that too is that there's a mechanic called the slaughter die, and so every weapon has this extra die that you roll for damage. And I don't remember specifically, but basically, depending on the severity of the hit, maybe the d20 roll, or it's almost like a critical damage die that's included on every roll. So there's a chance that you could do a huge amount of damage to someone.
That's an interesting idea for
it. Always a chance for a critical. Yeah,
we're going to introduce wild dice, so it could be a wild die for damage, perhaps. Maybe that.
Yeah, it could be like an exploding die or something like that too, right? Like there's lots of ways to just tweak things in the OSR without changing much, right? But it's always interesting to watch the characters around level 5 or 6. They're like, oh yeah, we can stand and deliver. We don't actually have to run and hide again. Oh, and then, you know, as the GM, you're like, oh no, you still have to run and hide. I'm gonna make your life a living hell. It's gonna be good. But no, it definitely is it's interesting that was the critique that was brought up. I think a couple of people, right? And it's not unfair, but I don't know. I find that's the thing. Like, I don't like hit points. I don't like armor class. One of the games I used to run was Heavy Gear, which was a mecha game. Wasn't really a mecha game. It was just Heavy Gears what the mecha was called. This is a game. It had its moment in the mid to late 90s, and it was great. And there was no hit points. What you did was you had wound thresholds. And so if the damage from the weapon was over a certain threshold, you were, lightly wounded or seriously wounded, or instantly killed, which was terrifying. I've always appreciated that, because it was like that. It always felt more correct, but it was also, that's just one way of playing it, right? So
I used to hate all that armor class and hit points, because I started with D&D as most people, but I didn't play D&D for long. I just a couple of years, and then I moved on to Call of Cthulhu and other stuff, Vampire, Cult, and several other horror games, Conspiracy X, and I think all those avoid hit points, and they have those that kind of threshold: light wound, serious wound, critical wound, dead. And it feels more natural.
It feels in a way more dramatic, right? Because hit points, it's like, okay, you're at full hit points, you're at 1 hit point. It's the same thing, right? And you can add all sorts of things in there, but it just slows things down, right? And that's why I think the probably the best approach is to sort of think of hit points as a sort of luck and experience field around you, right? That like those last 10 hit points, or maybe that first hit dies, those are your actual hit points, your actual ability physically withstand like real injury. But everything else is just scratches and cover and luck, right? Maybe
it's what makes more sense, thinking about it like that, and this is your character's physical resilience, and then you are taking some bits out of it. It's not as rational.
It might even be just better to not think about it so much, right? and just sort of narrate it in its way, right? Like, and that's it. It all depends on how you're feeling about it in the table, and that's okay. But when I started running Stars Without Number, a lot of my group that's been playing with me for a long time are like, really? With armor class and hit points, you don't like that stuff at all, right? Well, it's also really easy, and everyone knows how to do it, and the other stuff that's in those games, all the generators and all the sandbox tools, the GM tools are really, they're great. So that's what we're doing, is shamelessly stealing all those ideas from other places and making them our own, because that's those random generators make things more interesting. I don't know.
I'm doing the same.
Good. No, it's fun to watch you guys, because I gotta say, like, not only are the products great, I haven't really cracked open Wretched Space. It's a busy time of year for me.
So you have the expanded version or the first one? Well, if it's
309 pages or
so. It's the expanded. You got the whole book.
There's a lot going on here, right? There's a lot going on here.
There's some setting there. It's more than just. It's not just the toolbox.
This is the one with the you play the sort of contract law enforcement.
Yes, that's the option, the default option for players. Right. Wretched Legion.
Right. It's funny. My eldest daughter just watched Star Wars with me for the first time, which, like, I'm sure your understanding is like just how huge but of course it's the Star Wars Episode 4, because you're going to start with Episode 4, because why wouldn't you? And, you know, Greedo shoots first. And you realize that, like, you know, wow, back in my day, we had a thing called an anti-hero,
Mhm.
you know.
Yep.
But no, she, you know, and she doesn't even realize when, you know, Greedo dies, just how lame that scene is now, right? And you guys really capture it with this whole idea of like the 7 deadly sins and the playing these characters that are, you know, by default not nice. It's great.
Yeah, nobody's nice. That's what we're trying to. Everybody's bad.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to play.
Sometimes
But
even in
some are
fiction.
worse than others. Yeah.
I've been reading the Captain Alatriste series.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm on the
we love
last
that.
one. I'm on the
Yeah.
Pirates of the Levant. And yeah, just when you think that Captain Alatriste is like actually a stand-up guy, he's not exactly. Not exactly.
No, not really. No,
No.
he's an anti-hero. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of the inspirations, of course. They translate everything to English? I didn't think so.
I think so, but I'm not
Oh,
sure.
did they?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
I'm on.
There was a delay there.
Yeah,
I
there
remember
was a
that.
delay, and there was a really pretty collection that we had, but then the last
Yeah,
ones,
that's it.
but then they changed when had to buy them differently.
Yeah.
Well, I finished the Cavalier in the Yellow Doublet, and I'm on to the next one. And I don't think there's any more in English if after that. I don't know if there's any more in Spanish after that, but
I think there are, because
okay.
I think we have them
Well,
all in English. I don't know. I'm looking
yeah,
at.
well,
Yeah,
Let me check it.
I have them behind me, but yeah, I
Alatriste
need to go
novels.
up to see.
I'm going to check it.
I need to read them again one of these days.
they're I think I devoured 4 of them over the summer. It was like it was exactly what I needed. You know, I was
Yeah.
I didn't want to read anything. You know, I didn't want to read any history, and I certainly didn't want to read any like current event stuff. I was like, I need to take a break from all this, and let's read about some swashbucklers in Spain. This is going to be great. You know, and
There's a role
first-
playing game, but it's in Spanish. It was never
Well,
translated.
it doesn't exist anymore. It was
Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore.
It's out of print for 10 years, I think.
Well, between Honor and Intrigue, Savage Worlds, and a couple of others, I'm sure you could pretty quickly adapt.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
anything.
that's. Did you read anything else from the same author?
I haven't. No.
Yeah, yes, he writes historical novels. Not just historical novels, but well, historical novels, but
Mostly historical novels.
with a twist. He has another one with an anti-hero. It's called what's the name of
Falco.
the Falco? Yeah, Falco. It's interesting because it's the guy works for the I don't know the name of the thing.
fascist regime. Well,
Yeah, he works
during-
so it's in the during the wars, or the guy works for Franco. So well, no, not for Franco, it's himself, but
He works
I
for
can't
the- he works
I
for
can't
the-
remember the name of the secret agency with the state police of the time. So he is the protagonist, but he isn't an evil character. He's just he's working for the secret
But
service.
before they were, I think in the book is mentioned that before his boss used to work for the
Yeah.
other side, but then
Yeah,
when
that's-
Franco comes to power, they start working for Franco.
So he basically is
And he was a thief or something like that, right? And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
he can come work for us or he can go to prison.
yeah. So he's a civil
Right.
servant. So the government changed, and it's,
the worst kind of villain. Amazing.
so it's just adapted. So he's not evil. He's just
Yeah, he has the same a bit of
gray
the same
areas.
feeling that Alatriste.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting that whole series of novels. It's not a you know, it's a part of history that I'm only familiar with because, you know, I'm like, ooh, Sir Francis Drake, right? You know, you in the English speaking world, you learn about the pirates, and you know, and the attacks on the gold and silver galleons coming out of Mexico, but you don't and I learned a bit about the Inquisition and about you know, the conversos and all that stuff, and that comes up here and there in those novels. But he really paints a picture of Spain just at the beginning of its decline, right?
Yeah, it's the
really,
time of,
you know, the only anachronisms I've picked up, the only ones, is he uses modern metric system measurements. That's the only thing that, like, I was like, at one point I'm like 50 meters. I'm like, wait, meters? No, these aren't even invented yet. Oh, amazing! I finally picked up the one thing, right? Aside from that, it's so great. And the poetry, like, there's poetry in these that I'm sure is probably better in Spanish, and but it still works. But yeah, it's really a great series. The narration, the first person narration, and the digressions into poetry, especially in the Cavalier and the Yellow Doublet, it was all about like the theater, and I'm like, it was just a lot of fun to get into that and get this sort of the other one too, with the painting of the Surrender of Breda.
Yeah.
Also, there's a huge digression with Velasquez and that it was really neat. As a historian, I was really enjoying myself.
Yeah. I think Reverte is a very good author for people that like history. I think some of his books are not being translated in the most recent ones in
I
English.
think the older ones,
the older ones are.
The Fencing Master. The Fencing Master is translated, and I read some of them in English because I don't really like the Portuguese translations. That's which makes sense. They are probably closer, but the translators probably they are rubbish sometimes. The Portuguese translators aren't that good. I don't know. Sometimes.
My impression was that Portuguese and Spanish are close enough that you wouldn't have to translate, but I guess
no, you have to. Yeah, you have.
Yeah, you have to translate.
I can read Spanish, but for historical novels, it gets a bit hard.
I understand.
I read a couple of his books.
Yeah, we read some
depends.
in Spanish, but the most historical ones, it's.
And not just that, I gave up one of those because they're the very big books. There was one about a siege, the siege of something.
Yeah.
No, not El Cid.
Yeah.
The siege of
I don't remember. I read that one in Spanish, but it was very hard.
It's a very big
especially
book.
Because it talks a lot about ballistics.
Yeah. That's the problem also. Ballistics, I can't.
Yeah. I mean, I feel your pain. I don't use French at my job, but I mean, I speak a lot of French, but reading French would just be brutal, and we won't talk about Hebrew, where my Hebrew literacy is actually better than my conversational at this point, but I couldn't read a historical novel and get any joy out of it. It would just be brutal, right? But especially in French, where I don't have the literacy skills. It's not. It stopped. It stopped just before we started getting into was it passé simple? So, which is all the literary tenses. I'm lost.
Here we learn French, but as we don't use it as often as English, it kind of. I learned French and I was capable of having a conversation a long time ago. Right now, if I tried, I can say bonjour, okay?
But I can understand if people around me speak in French, especially if they're not French speakers, I can understand.
Right.
And I have people,
it's easier to understand than to
I've
speak
worked with people I work in a multinational company. I've worked in 2 multinational companies, so there are people that speak French, and sometimes they're speaking French among themselves because they think people are not understanding. And I'm like, I know exactly what you're saying.
Well, yeah, my French, of course, is Québécois French or Canadien French, and so I remember the last time I was on a plane. I think it was on an Air France plane, and so I'm speaking French to the stewardess because I wanted to be a jerk, and because she speaks perfect English, but I'm like, oh no, on va parler en français, right? And she's like, oh, tu as un accent canadien si mignon. You can see that she was just like, I hate you. I can't believe you're subjecting me to this. Yeah, my accent's pretty bad. My wife actually speaks like perfect French Canadian French. It's actually the first time I heard her speak it, because she works in French, and I was completely shocked. But yeah, for me, when I hear Parisian French or North African French, I have a harder time with it because it's much faster or more fluid than Quebecois French, which I'm more used to, which has a certain rests and a certain rhythm to it that I'm more used to. But,
I had some years ago, I did an intensive course of French during the summer. After that, I was actually able to read in French, but then I stopped. I don't remember. But one of the things that we did in the classes, well, there was there was a class that we talked about and listened to other French accents, and I couldn't understand the words of the Canadian.
Yeah, the Canadian French is really, really, really strange. I've heard some Leonard Cohen songs, and some of them they are in French. And what is he saying?
Well,
what the hell is that?
You can't judge Leonard Cohen French because, like, look, Leonard Cohen, like me, is Jewish from Montreal and has a specific accent that he picked up. Like his
doesn't look like French. It doesn't sound like French.
He came from a generation like I have late uncles and aunts from that same generation, and they all speak great French, but it has a very specific accent in French because they all learned it on the streets. But yeah, the French Canadian, like Quebecois French, has all sorts of different accents, right? I remember once I was working in a bakery and there was a guy who delivered the flour, and I couldn't understand him at all, and he was just from a different region of Quebec, and I was just like, this is going to be a problem. And so I did my best, but it was just so different. And yeah, it really it's really an interesting dialect because it comes from a different region of France that before French was really standardized, right? It comes from like Northwest France, I think, mainly. Yeah, I don't know, we're all a little salty here right now the language politics here are getting a little ridiculous, but we love the province and we love the French language. We do. It's great. It's lots of fun.
It's the difficult language.
Yeah. It's not the language itself. It's the politics around identity and around being in Quebec and being an English minority in a sea of French that's itself a minority in a sea of English is it's weird. It's weird. But yeah, no, Leonard Cohen, wow, geez, he's I saw him in 2008 on one of his tours when he came out of retirement because it turned out that his manager had taken him for everything. And so we saw him at the Place des Arts here in Montreal, and it was a very special night because he was like coming home and it was the jazz festival and it was a great time. But yeah, he's one of those.
When did we watch him, Sylvia?
It was on the first tour when he came back.
Yeah,
so it's probably this would be on the same year.
He wasn't supposed to come to Portugal, but then
there was a petition. Yeah.
He had lots of fans here.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah,
so he ended up coming 2 more times. I went to see him 4 more times. I don't know. 3 more times,
no,
maybe.
2 more times.
2 more times. I came to see him the second one, but yeah, we missed the third one. And I told Miguel, let's buy tickets. And they're like, no, we don't want to see it again.
Oh no,
we're already
kind of stupid. I regret it.
He was a special performer. You know what's the mark of his abilities was that just how often he's covered and how artists can make the songs better. I mean, if you ever want to make a busy room completely quiet, you play the Buckley. Is it Jim Buckley? Can't remember. Not Tim Buckley's
Tim
son.
Buckley, I think.
Jeff,
so it's his son.
Buckley.
Jeff Buckley, thank you. You play the Jeff Buckley version of Hallelujah, you will hear a pin drop, right? It just, the entire, like whatever's going on in the room will stop and everyone's listening to Jeff Buckley singing Leonard Cohen, and that's it. Like, it's really something. Bob Dylan's the same sort of way, right? You get people who can sing better, than Leonard Cohen or sing better than Bob
Yeah,
Dylan.
but I
Yeah.
kind of like the version of Hallelujah that he
I
did.
prefer
After
the
he was-
original.
when he was older, because
I always prefer the original. Yeah.
guttural, and
It's-
he's like he's singing from the grave.
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't
I
like
like it.
the earlier songs. I don't really well, I like the songs, but I prefer the new versions
I understand.
because
I
the sound
understand.
is sounds much better.
I really like first we take Manhattan, right? That's
Yeah.
that I think is really good performance. But I think that yeah, like that's it. The songwriting is there, so it's really great to you know, it's nice that here's this guy coming from Montreal that has made such an impact everywhere, and he yeah. I don't know how we got onto Leonard Cohen. Well,
I
right,
don't
the
know.
accents.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah,
There's a Portuguese community there, right?
oh yeah. You can both Portuguese communities. You can get Brazilian food and you can get Portuguese chicken and fish. That's the Montreal. That's how you can tell, right? With Montreal, is like, does the community have restaurants here? It's made it, right? And so yeah, there's chicken. Lots of Portuguese chicken places. I'm sure you probably know what I'm talking about more than I do, because you know. But no, it's
Yeah, it's funny because I think in the UK there's also
Yeah, that's
chicken, and it's not the best thing we do. So what the
no,
hell?
but that's well, it's easy probably.
Yes, exactly.
well, it's a lot of well, fast food, we'll call it, right? Sort
Yeah,
of
yeah,
like
exactly.
Yeah, that's
simple
It's probably
Portuguese
the
fast
most
food.
Portuguese. Yeah, it's the most Portuguese of fast food.
very nice.
Yeah, it's probably
Yeah, and beef finish, but that doesn't really make it's a pork steak sandwich.
maybe they should have a Casa de Frangos no Moscavide. This is like kind of a chicken McDonald's, the equivalent to
In
McDonald's.
Portugal,
in
yeah.
Portugal.
Wow. That's
It
how much
started
chicken
It started in a very small place in a suburb of Lisbon.
interesting. Yeah, there's definitely a Portuguese community here, and it's fairly old. No, it's probably not. It's probably from the 40s and 50s. It's probably post war. I could be wrong, but there was a lot of people came in from Portugal and from Greece during the 40s and 50s. But yeah, I mean, everyone's here. Montreal's a great city in that sense.
I don't know if it was in Montreal, but there was a friend of mine. Well, not a friend, a college, someone I met in college, and he lived in Canada for some time, and I think he was very close to the Greek community, so maybe it was there. I think we have a question.
Yes, we have a role-playing related question.
How
We're
does
talking
one
about
find
chicken.
how does one find the balance between realism or game mechanics that facilitate realistic game experience and overtly crunchy or complex mechanics?
Oh, wow. You find it at the table, right? It depends. Well, this kind of comes back to that question before, and I realize that I'm actually running out of time because I have a game to run in about 40 minutes, but it's okay.
I have a session to prepare also.
Yes,
like, oh my God,
we're playing later today, but it's still early.
I almost never run on the weekends. I'm so surprised that my players are like, can we do a Sunday during the day? I'm like, okay. So basically it's at the table, right? It depends on what everyone wants, right? If you're playing like if I was going to run, say, a Twilight 2000 or some sort of military game, I would want something that has enough mechanics to handle, you know, suppressive fire and panicking under fire and a whole bunch of military stuff that is, you know, without going completely overboard, because you don't want Phoenix Command, right? You don't want the serious like too much crunch. You're not playing a role-playing game. You're playing a military simulation without miniatures, and you may as well just play a miniatures game. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like there's some great milsim miniatures games that you could do, but like it depends on, like, if you're playing a game where you're you're a small group of soldiers running around trying to survive and maybe trying to get back home in the case of Twilight 2000, then you want a game that's going to give you that experience. If you're playing a science fiction game where it's, you know, Planet of the Week, and you don't need the, you don't, I don't know, you it really depends on the setting, but it really, really depends on what the game is for at the table. And you know, so when I run mecha games, generally they're not about mecha. Those are cool, they're good props, they are to Western games as horses are to gunfighters, right? You need to have the horses, you need to have the mecha in the game because that's what the game has as its accoutrement, but the game is still about the characters. And so depending on what you're doing, you want something that's still focused on the characters. Like that's my take, because I don't run a lot of crunch heavy games. I don't find Cepheus Deluxe particularly crunchy. I think Savage Worlds is probably the crunchiest game I've played in the last 5 or 6 years, and even then it's medium crunch, right? You get games like Shadowrun can get really, really crazy. But yeah, I mean, it really depends on where you're at in terms of the what you want at the table. It's not you know, you can cut corners in certain ways, and that's okay too in terms of the rules, but yeah, you want to be able to have an enjoyable tabletop experience that with your group. That's the thing that comes first, right? That's why, like, when I edit the Cepheus books, when I edit the Stella Gamma books, it's always about like, how can we make this the most useful to players and referees at the table, because these aren't intended to just, you know, be we're doing this so that people can play them. And so if you're playing a game and the crunch is too heavy, then you got to dial it back. You got to find something that works a little differently for you. If you're playing it and you want more texture and you want more crunch, then you're gonna have to find something else, right? Like there's a great game out called Warbirds. This is out of Outrider Studios. It doesn't exist anymore, I don't think. And it was a diesel punk air combat RPG, right? It was amazing. If you were into, you roll a d6 to get everything done, 1d6, and it had a certain good feel of the sort of World War II diesel punk fighting, you know, air combat, right? But it wasn't realistic at all, in the sense that it didn't have any crunch, right? It was a d6 and you had a whole bunch of plane and pilot abilities that gave you bonuses, and that was it. And I ran it for my players, and they're like, no thanks. I'm like, why not? They're like, well, we want like maneuvers. And I'm like, well, you have to describe them. And they're like, well, yeah, but we want to actually have a menu of maneuvers that we can do, and then we get a game effect, and we want to have them, like, we want all that in the game. And I'm like, oh, so we want more crunch, we want more texture. And that was the end of that, right? You know, in what we find with Cepheus Deluxe, right, is that, you know, for example, in ship combat, we went for something completely abstract, where you just roll a d6 and add a whole bunch. You have a ladder, right, where the position, you have a higher position means you get to attack first, and you have a advantage in your attacks, and someone who's lower than you can't even attack you, right? And yeah, we nicked it from a bunch of different places, including Warbirds. But the idea here is that you know, space combat is has to be abstract, because otherwise, you know, you get into vectors and you get into, like, you know, the ranges are ridiculous, and so you have to abstract it. So that just depends on what people want, right? But at the same time, the crunch for space combat comes in the ship damage, right? The component damage and things like that, because for the characters, for their ship, the players and their character ship, you want to have like, oh, the engine's taken a hit, got to go fix that, right? Oh, the sensors, oh, you've lost fuel, what are you going to do, right? There's all sorts of stuff that it drives the story. It makes for more story, more adventure, more stuff that you have to do and deal with, rather than something very abstract. So I hope that answers the question, because it's you're at the that's a question that addresses one of the fulcrums of what it is to game and how to game, right? And why people make certain design choices the way they do. And yeah, it's really a good question.
So okay, you have a session to prepare,
Yeah.
so we don't have any more questions
for 2
here.
hours. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I thank you for letting me blather on. And
No problem.
It was a great chat.
Yes.
You have
The
to do
thing
it
is
again.
that now we have more people joining, and probably we have more
that's the
people
problem.
popping in the chat. So we have Bill Allen. He says, "Great thoughts, Josh. Thank you for your insights." And before we go, let me just say that we had a comment here from Bob Bursch. He's loving the AI art, the new books and settings. And those people are always coming. Some people
maybe watch the Grim Jim's review.
The AI art stuff. The AI art stuff is it's just like whoosh, right over my head. Like I said, I can't draw my way out of a paper bag, so I'm a wet paper bag. So you guys are doing something that's you're right on the edge. You're living right on the edge there, right?
I think we were lucky that AI art appeared at this time.
I couldn't do this without AI art, so I was using stock art from those stock art sites, but there's a limit to what you can do with pictures of people.
Even if we had money to invest in commissioned art, you wouldn't have the artists to keep up with
next week. I think next week. No, that's not possible.
well, that's it, right? Like it's really it's going to be interesting, because I love gaming art, right? And it evokes so much, right? It helps so much with the setting, with the characters, with everything that you want. But c'est cher, right? It's expensive, and like that's why, like Cepheus Deluxe, the first iteration of Cepheus Deluxe and Cepheus Lite, and most of our games have always been stock art with the occasional commissioned piece. Otherwise it's all stock art and public domain stuff.
Yeah, that's the way to go. Well, we did some investment. So the Wretched Country cover is a commissioned work, and we did a couple more, and well, there's this one, but this one was gifted from Wargul. You can see, well, it's a retrospectation,
right?
And we have another one that was offered by the artist, but well, if we have to pay, it's a big investment.
This one was one of our first commissioned pieces, right? Piracy Drive was one of our first commissioned pieces for a cover, and I think, hang on, let me find it. Yeah, there's one other one here that, when we got it, we were totally blown away that we got it. It was for Sword of Cepheus.
Yeah,
that one is nice.
That one is amazing.
Like when I saw that, I was like, whoa! But inside it's all stock art, right? And so what you guys are doing is, well, it's I mean, I like artists and I want them to have work, so I don't know what to say, in the sense that, like, on the one hand, I don't want, you can't, we're going to have to wait and see what AI does to art. We're going to have
I don't think it's going to.
I don't think so.
I don't think it's going to destroy. Well, and I see some artists that some of them are embracing it, using to improve into their own designs. Others probably are not going to be affected by it. But for indie publishers, you cannot afford to commission the entire book.
Probably what's happening, at least in role-playing games, I think what happens is that people who weren't before paying for art will keep on not paying for art, because now they can use.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. So, but that's just that. Probably this is the most likely thing that will happen.
Yeah, if it you know, I mean, I think really in my sense, that's it, right? I don't want it to have a detrimental effect on artists who already, you know, get paid in exposure a little too much, you know, and need to have their careers. But I think if it's not really going to be affecting that market, then it's probably all right.
I don't think it will, at least because it's if big companies they can afford for art would start using AI art, then in that case, yeah, that's not cool. If you can pay for the artists, then if we could pay for it, I would have no problems for that with doing that. But yeah, it's too expensive for a small
and it,
publisher.
Almost impossible to keep up with this rhythm. Where would I find?
That is your problem.
Where would I find someone that would, okay, next week I need this? That's impossible. Well, no one can do that unless stock art.
Yeah, Diversity and Dragons is saying that it will just cut into the stock art industry, probably.
Yeah,
that's
true. That's true. Yeah, the stock art industry probably is going to suffer a lot, and
but it's probably going to be better for the artists that have commissioned art. If stock art disappears, well, the ones that can really distinguish
or maybe
themselves.
It doesn't disappear, but they'll probably start doing less stock art, probably, or just,
and that's that's yeah, it's a good
profit
point.
Less, probably.
Yeah, that's where it's going to change. But no, it's you know, not my wheelhouse in terms of the in terms of Cepheus, or in terms of Stella Gamma. I look at an art like, well, that's a nice piece of art. Okay. All right. Where does it go? Oh, it goes there. Okay, great. All right. That's it. You know, I really like, but no, I've been watching what you guys are doing with this, because it's a big change. It definitely, I mean, let me ask you this. When you did the cover for Wretched Space, did you actually have in mind the dog race first, or did you develop this first and then you're like, hey, there's a dog I'm going to make with sunglasses, I'm going to make it into a sentient character?
No, there was already a canine race.
Okay.
So the problem was the reverse. I had to try lots of times to get that dog,
the right dog,
that specific dog there.
There was a part that was the Coombs came with the dog race, and then he was saying that's not the right dog. The dog should be this type of dog.
I already had one dog, but I had to do another dog because it said no, that dog doesn't work. I need another dog.
It's not.
So
this dog.
I can tell you exactly how many different versions I had of all the characters, not just the dog.
Right.
Perhaps 100 or more.
Wow. Because I mean, that's actually, I mean, think about it like this, right? You know, in a way, you could use the AI as a random adventure generator, random character generator, right?
Yeah, probably. You just insert something there, and you get one picture. That thing that has already happened. I get one thing, and then I trade the text. I change it so that picture can be used because it's nice. For the covers is usually the opposite. I want one cover and I repeat it until I get the result I want. But inside, lots of things that I changed, even characters. Okay, this guy, I want this one, but he's supposed to have a mustache or not have a mustache. So okay, now he has one. So I'll just change it.
Is it like, I haven't even looked at any of this. Is it like a little check mark box, like mustache, click? You know?
No, it's just you have to write it. You write up front. So you just say, I want a portrait of a man with blue eyes and a beard and a hat, and well, all that.
It is a bit of work. Yeah, it's not just.
It's not that easy. And then you get something, but then you have other options, because if, for example, you want a picture, or a drawing, or an illustration, or a cover, or a photograph, and all that makes it different. And if you mention a color, or a texture, or a scenery, or a mood, you can actually add moods, sinister, romantic, all that, and the name of the artist, which usually works. For example, now I'm doing a Wretched Epoch scenario. And this time I wanted something more impressionist, but not too much. So I was searching for some author that does portraits for the character portraits. I don't know. I can't remember his name. Some Berard, I think. But, it's not a very famous painter, but he did lots of portraits. So I wanted portraits. That's the artist I chose, and it does work. You get characters that have the feel that you want for a police detective, a landlady, a woman, a man, a prostitute, whatever. So it appears there, and you get the answer. So it's very interesting, especially for this kind of game.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, now it is time for
Now
me
you
to
have
go.
to go.
So
Yes,
thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for having me, and maybe we'll do this again at some other date.
We should do it.
And yeah, I'm going to plug Cepheus Deluxe Enhanced Edition is now out on PDF.
And soon will be available on print, right?
And print soon.
Soonish.
Yeah. This month, I'm told. This month. So, and yeah. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you for coming.